What's up, everybody? I go by NeRo AnGeLo, and this is the Black in a Minute podcast, doing yet another live stream. It's good to be back. Like I said before, you'll just have to give us a little bit of grace. It's going to be me. I think I'll be doing another solo one next week. And then after that, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled thing. But before we really get started, just seeing who's out there. How you guys doing? Make sure everything's set. Trying to get my life together, more or less. Make sure we're good and live. If you're on here, feel free to say what's up. Man, literally the randomest news we could have gotten, or at least that I've seen. Apparently Bob Saget died. That's messed up, man. Unexpected too. I think he was only 65. That is crazy. If you're listening in, just let me know how everything sounds. Give me an idea of how everything sounds. I actually used the big speaker this time, so I'm kind of curious as to how that sounds to you guys. We're in the process of shifting to a new location, so I kind of had to doctor some things together this time. But yeah, what's good? They got your government name back on here. Miss Kiara Tolbert is Tolbert. I'm just being silly. Let me see. I'll go ahead and get these set up. I'll get our question of the day up first. All right, we got a few more people. Feel free to introduce yourselves, for real. We'll go ahead and get started here in a second. What's good, DSOG? Let's see. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this up here. That's gonna be our question of the day. I always try to do one question. Let's see. Make sure that thing gets pinned on YouTube. I'm not going to post that up just yet. We'll go ahead and start in, like it says. Let me fix that actually. Lots of good things. That's good, man. That's good. Definitely glad to hear it. Nothing wrong with staying busy, honestly. I totally get that. Yeah. Oh, just waiting on getting stuff done? Or you mean like, or just waiting on the discussion to start? Because yeah, we'll probably start here in a second since we got 6 people in. Um, so we've got enough people to make a functional discussion. If you can see it, tonight's topic is mistakes and how to deal with them. It's just something that kind of just came to my mind about a day or two ago. If not even that, it might have actually been earlier today. But I was thinking about how, in a lot of cases, we can sometimes allow things like issues and problems and errors, basically what I call errors, to do the most to mess with us, And sometimes, if we're not careful, those sort of things can overwhelm us and they can make us into perfectionists, which to some degree is not a bad thing, but sometimes it can be problematic just because of the fact that, what's good, Sid? Just because of the fact that the importance of mistakes are not for you to be so stuck on them that you can't get past them. The important part of mistakes is really for you to see how you could have done that better, is to take that apart and analyze it and be like, all right, how could I have approached this differently? You know what I mean? How could I have looked at this in a way that would work better? And I think sometimes we miss that boat because it's very easy to just get frustrated and get mad at whatever's going on, So that's definitely something that I do want to talk about because I think that's something that's relevant to all of us. Everybody makes mistakes. I think sometimes we forget that, but in all seriousness, everybody makes mistakes. People make errors. Errors happen. So with that being said, it's what you do with the knowledge that you made a mistake. It's what you do with the fact that you know that you screwed up. It's not sitting there and dwelling on it. It's not sitting there and just being, stuck on the fact that it's happening. It's really just realizing, okay, this happened. What do I do? Right? What do I do to correct the problem? And this isn't intentional, but a lot of the stuff we've been talking about in the last few weeks, I want to say, have been centered pretty primarily around realistic problem-solving methods, And honestly, a lot of that is because I guess I've just had that on the brain lately. I don't know. Like, it's been one of those things that I've just really tried to think critically about when it comes to, making things happen. So, I mean, it's one of those things that I really do hope for us to do more to figure out, because I know that it can be difficult. It can be difficult to try to get past a mistake or an error that you make because you think that that's the end of the world, and no one ever really wants to feel that way. No one wants to feel like, you're just stuck in a hole. Kiki Nikoru said, when I unintentionally really hurt someone with my words due to responding out of anger, I felt like crap and apologized. I also made it a point not to allow that to happen again. Yeah, And honestly, that's a good way of approaching it. You took a step back, even though you know that you didn't intend to do that and you didn't intend to cause somebody pain or hurt them, you still addressed it anyway. You addressed it for what it is, and you made it work. You made it so that person or whoever it was understood that you weren't supposed to do that. That wasn't something that you intended to do, and you definitely didn't want to cause somebody pain, And I think that sometimes we get so stuck on whether it's our fault or not that, we don't care about whether it actually hurts somebody. And that's not the way to be, Realistically, you want to try to make sure that you're being as genuine as possible to somebody, because that's the way you should be, honestly. Like, that's the way you should be. If it's something that you did that was a mistake, or something that there was a problem and you created a problem or you became part of that problem, whether it was intentional or not, you have to address that. I can't count how many things that I've done that were unintentional to hurt somebody, but that doesn't mean that I get a pass on, paying attention to that. And that's just the truth. But, that's just part of life. We learn that, we can't go around pretending not to be accountable. And I mean, we know there are people who do. There are people who really will just try not to address something like that ever. It doesn't even matter how big or small the mistake is. They don't address it because they don't see themselves as someone who makes mistakes. They don't see themselves as someone who makes errors. So because of that, they don't address it, And I had to catch myself a few times in situations like that because I believed that I was beyond having to say anything about an error that I made or anything like that, and trying to get past it in one way or another, thinking that if I don't say anything about it, if I don't address it, if I don't speak up about it, then, and no one else speaks up about it, then it's like it doesn't exist, right? And that's not the way life is. You have to look at the things that you do and you have to approach them head on. No matter how big, bad, good, or otherwise it is. And that's just the truth. Hold on. Let's see. I'm just messing around with stuff. Hold on. Let's see how that sounds. But I mean, in a lot of cases, there are a lot of moments where we really don't want to admit that we've done something wrong or that we've hurt somebody, because we don't want to be seen, or we don't want to see ourselves as the type of person that is capable of hurting someone. When in all reality, we're all capable of hurting somebody. We're all capable of making mistakes. There is no such thing as infallibility when it comes to humans. We're not infallible. And the more that we learn to look at things objectively and admit that we are capable of making mistakes and that mistakes are a given when it comes to being human, the easier it gets for us to be able to deal with things and to address problems. because sometimes we don't address problems because we pretend that there's no problem. And that becomes part of the problem, honestly. Like, there's no reason that a grown adult, grown man or woman, whatever, shouldn't be able to say something about a problem that they've caused. There's no reason. Like, literally. There are moments where we can end up in situations that may force us into a corner where we have to make a snap decision. And maybe that decision happens to be a bad one. Maybe we just make a mistake, right? You have to own that, you know. Speaking of such, let me post up this question real quick. Like I said, let's keep the interactions up. Our brother Sid is with us. You know, prayers up to him. He will be, hopefully y'all pray for traveling mercies for him, because he will be traveling, I believe, this next weekend up to see his brother off. So hopefully that works out. Hopefully everything is all right. He will be in our thoughts. I understand what it's like to lose somebody, and I've never lost anyone that close though. So I can't necessarily say that I can even imagine what that feels like. You know, to me, that's scary. But that's a bit off the subject. Or actually, it's not. One of the things I think sometimes we make mistakes with, or we realize we've made a mistake with, is sometimes when we lose people. Sometimes when we lose people and we lose, you know, whether it's contact with them or whether they pass or whether something else happens to them, we realize that, well, there's more that I could have done here and there's more that I could have done there, and I could have said this, I could have done that, and maybe you just didn't have the opportunity, you know, maybe it wasn't meant to be. And while it's something that is worth addressing, it's not necessarily something I would say that you have to be heavy on yourself about. If not just because of the reason that it causes you to be harder on yourself than you need to be. Jerome Green says the only reason we make mistakes is because we don't know. That's why we need mentors. Well, yes, that is part of it. Not knowing is a part of making mistakes, and it is a part of why we do make certain errors. But I can only partially agree to that, just because of the fact that sometimes we make errors and we can be as informed as possible. We can know everything there is to know about the subject. We can know everything there is to know about whatever the thing is, and yet we will still make a mistake, right? And it's in those moments sometimes that are the hardest to accept. Those are the hardest ones to accept. Not necessarily the ones where, you know, like you said, you were uninformed. It's an allowable failure because you were unaware. You just made a mistake because purely out of ignorance. But if it's something where you do have knowledge of what's going on, and you're aware of what is expected of you, or you're aware of what's expected in that moment, and you still make a mistake, those are always, the hardest ones to accept. Those tend to be the hardest ones to accept. Because now, not only do you have to acknowledge that you made a mistake, you also have to acknowledge the fact that you knew it was a mistake. You knew that this was something that you shouldn't have done, you know, and now you have to admit your complicity in it, and that's heavy, you know. That's not easy for a lot of people, but I do appreciate your perspective on that. I do, but that, like I said, that's something I can only partially agree to be honest. Let's see. But is it a mistake if you know about it? Yeah, it can still be a mistake. Um, the reason I say that, let's see, Gigi Nicoder says the biggest sign of someone who has leader or leader-like qualities is someone who is wise, is when they are able to own up to said mistakes, apologize for words and actions, and learn and grow from it. Yes. And yeah, it can be a mistake if you know it. Actually, those tend to be the most common mistakes. And the reason being is because we think that we have it. We think that we have it figured out. We think that we already have it understood how we're supposed to approach a specific situation. And maybe we're just mistaken, you know? Maybe we were just wrong. And that's sometimes the biggest thing, that sometimes we think we have it sewn up. We think we have it figured out, and we really don't, you know? For whatever reason, we don't have it figured out, you know? And honestly, that's totally okay. You know, these things happen. There's nothing you can do about it. Definition of a mistake. Let's see. Mistake is an action or judgment that is misguided or wrong. So yeah, it can either be the version you're talking about is a mistake that is misguided, where you literally just did not have the right guidance in order to make the right decision. You did not have the right information to make the right decision. There was no way that you could have made the right decision because you just didn't have it, right? So that can be a mistake. But the other version of that is something where it's just wrong. And even if you have knowledge, quote unquote, of what you should be doing, you could easily make a mistake and still do it wrong. I mean, think about the things that you've done in your life, that you do in your daily life, right? And all of us can do this. Take a moment and think about what your daily routine is, right? You know, I'm sure there's a few ladies on here. I'm sure there's been plenty of times where you do your makeup every day or every other day or every week or whatever, however often you do it. Oh, no. I know you're not taking a side. I was just explaining that. So, I mean, I appreciate your question. I definitely do. Thanks, Jerome. I do appreciate that. Because it's good that we break these things down. Because I'm a definition person. So I prefer it when we can take something and pick it apart. So I'm totally fine with that. But what I was going to say is, like, you know, like ladies, they can be in a job where they do their hair, nails, or their face up a certain way either every day or every week, you know, and they could just have one of those days where they mess up on it. Does it mean it's not a mistake anymore because they know how to do it? No, it's still a mistake. Now, it might be a mistake that hits a little bit harder because they feel like they should already know how to do it. And sometimes that's the hard part. That's the tough part. Is not necessarily making the mistakes where you are unsure about what side to take or what position to take. It's the mistakes where you should know what to do, you know, where you should be absolutely knowledgeable about whatever's going on and you still make the mistake. And sometimes that happens, you know, but I mean, that's just one of those things. I've been experimenting too much with this one. I think I'll switch out to something else. But one of the heaviest things for me when it comes to dealing with mistakes are mistakes of that kind. You know, where you honestly end up kind of coming at yourself a little hard because you're always thinking, man, I should have known that. I should have saw that coming. I should have knew that was going to be how things happen. I should have understood that, right? When the truth of the matter is, some errors just can't be accounted for. You know what I mean? You can't always plan for everything. We wish we could. We try to. A lot of us try to. I'm one of the type who tries to make allowances and make tweaks so that way everything does fit. But at the end of the day, sometimes you can't. And at the end of the day, at some point, you may screw up. The biggest thing is learning to be okay with it. Learning to understand and accept a mistake for being just that, a mistake. And not trying to look deeper into it, not trying to dig more and trying to find something within that can help to encourage us to negatively talk about ourselves or negatively think about ourselves or to have a bad outlook or, God forbid, try to blame someone else for our mistake because we can't accept that it's ours. You have to accept your complicity in the things you do. You have to accept your complicity in the way that life goes. If there was some part of that that you had control over, it's on you to deal with that. Ain't nothing else that can be done. But I don't want to belabor the point way too much. One of the other things I wanted to talk about with mistakes, one of the other things I wanted to talk about with, just making errors and just how we deal with them is one thing we need to do is change our perception on how we look at some of these things, right? Because sometimes our perception of things can make a big difference in where we go with it and what our decision-making process is with said thing, right? Whenever we don't think much of the position that we're in, whenever we don't really, focus in on what it is that we need to be doing or what it is that is expected, we make a lot more errors because we're not really concerned with the results. On the flip side, if we become overtly stuck on the things that are going on around us and our effects on them, we can also end up in a situation where we make mistakes, and it's not because we want to make mistakes, not because we want to be problematic, it's because we've put ourselves in a position where we are so hyper aware of what potential mistakes may exist that we become sloppy. Because we become too concerned with the wrong things. And that's just something where it's just a bit of a balancing act, if you want to say that. You have to take a moment to approach things in a way to where it makes sense. You have to do that. You have to do that for yourself, because at certain moments, you're going to get caught up into something. You're going to do things that are going to cause errors and make certain things more difficult for you. That's just part of it. However, at the same time, arguing. Let's see. Magic System said, last time I made a serious mistake was when I was arguing with a friend. I did not allow a cool down period for us to talk things out. Instead, I didn't calm down and lost the friendship due to the arguing. Yeah. And you may not be alone in that. I can imagine a few different cases where I really thought I was going to lose a friend as a result of something like that, where I got so angry or they got so angry and we got so frustrated at each other that, we're coming to each other's necks and we're not even really approaching the problem. We're not addressing what's going on. And instead, we're just sitting there just being mad at each other, And sometimes that's the whole problem. It's like you said, you didn't allow yourself any time to really deal with it, and you have to do that. You have to do that. You have to give yourself time and energy to process certain things. You have to give yourself time and energy to make sense of whatever's going on. Because if you don't, you cause a whole lot of issues for yourself, you know? And that's not something that you want for yourself. I mean, realistically, you don't. So yeah, that's definitely a big thing, and it's very big of you to recognize that as an error and a mistake, because there are people who won't. You know, like honestly, there are people that will not accept that because some folks are just built that way. They think that they can't admit to a mistake. They think that they can't admit to being wrong for whatever reason. You know, and when you get into a mindset where you can't admit that you're wrong about something, or you can't admit that you've made a mistake or made an error, whether you think it's an error or not, if it's something that someone is bringing to you and there's a way to look at it differently where you could see yourself as being an error, at least analyze it. At least give it the benefit of the doubt of being like, okay, I don't think I did this wrong, but let me look at it and see if I did it wrong, you know? Because I think sometimes people worry about their pride getting hurt if they admit that they've done something wrong, or they worry about their pride and their integrity being hurt if they admit that they made an error, they made a mistake. It's like, no, that's part of life, you know? What does it say in the Bible? He who is without sin cast the first stone. So, like, realistically, no one really has any business looking at you differently if you made a mistake and you acknowledge it as a mistake. Now, if you flip and you try to make it into something that it's not, that's different. But if it's something that you acknowledge as an error and it's something that you acknowledge as a problem and you know it's problematic behavior, you know, and they know it's problematic behavior and you've made a point of it, then I don't really see why anybody should be coming at you for it. Like, realistically. And that's just me thinking off the top of my head, really. But, you know, everybody's different. Situations are different. And some people look at things differently. Sometimes it's not like that. I don't know if I like that one. But I'm like experimenting with stuff while I'm doing this too. Just because I have the extra time. But yeah, mistakes are things that can either guide or define us. And if we're willing to allow something like that to guide us, as in, you know, I made a mistake, I made an error, this is the direction I went, this is the direction I should go. Now, at the very least, you've narrowed down a direction that you don't need to go into, right? That's a positive. Okay, that's cool. In some cases, people let mistakes define them, where, oh, I made a mistake. I automatically label myself as a screw up. I label myself now as someone who is prone to error, right? And sometimes if you're not careful, you can get swallowed up in that so badly that you actually become what you think you are. You actually become a person who is error prone. All because you believe in your own heart that you are enough, you know? People don't understand. The power of the mind, the power of the tongue is insane. There are things that you can truly convince yourself of, and it doesn't take anything but just you thinking it constantly, right? There are situations. I was talking to somebody where they said they had a situation where they were so worried about making a mistake with their sobriety that they had a dream that they relapsed, you know? And that is scary. You know, imagine that. You had a dream that you relapsed. You had a dream that you did something that you told yourself you would never do again, right? I don't think there's anything scarier than that, because that makes you feel like, you've betrayed yourself. You feel like you violated something that you told yourself you would never do. And those are the type of things that hit a lot harder, because that hits at our pride, that hits at our principles, But when we overthink about, the mistakes that we've made, the errors that we've made, we end up getting in a hole where it's hard to get past something like that. And as a result, you can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can become the type of person that will ultimately always make a mistake just because you think that that's what you're supposed to be, right? So you have to be really careful about that, you know what I mean? And that's just something that a lot of us don't pay attention to. I didn't intend for that to be that slow. Hold on. So, and that's just something that, and I may not belabor this for too long, because I know everybody's a little tired. I know the snow and this lovely new variant of the vid has got everybody all messed up. So, but I will go ahead and leave y'all with this. There is nothing wrong with acknowledging a mistake. There is nothing wrong with recognizing that you made a mistake. There is everything wrong, however, with cursing or hurting yourself as a result of that mistake. Because that's not something you should be doing. You should always be focused on addressing the problem and seeking a solution. That's what you focus on. You don't focus in on, oh, the problem's here. Oh, I made a mistake. Oh, I made an error. I have a problem. Okay, you have a problem. All right, what are you going to do about it? Right? That's the part that you deal with. That's the part that's problematic if you don't deal with it, is what are you going to do about it? Because you can say that you have a problem all day long. I've seen and met and known people who said, oh, well, I have this condition, I have this problem, I have this problem. And it's not knocking those who do, but it's also the fact of, if there's something that you can do about it, as my brother would say if he was here, control the controllables. If there's something that can be done about it, it's okay if it isn't, but if there is something that you can do about your situation, then by all means, make the effort to do it. Because if you don't, it's going to be something that falls behind you and will trail behind you for as long as you allow it. What we have to remember is that things only affect and afflict us as much as we allow them to. And that's the biggest secret in the world, is that the things that do affect and afflict us, while they may affect and afflict us, and they might be guaranteed to do so, they only affect and afflict us as much as we allow them to. And that's just the way it is at the end of the day, because you can't blame something for still affecting you if it's something you allow to affect you. You have to be ready and willing to take whatever that negative is out of your life. And yeah, sometimes it's easier said than done. And I can accept that. That's absolutely true. But at the same time, you have to be willing to try. And one thing that, and this will be my last thing, I promise. One thing that I want, and I know that, Dark King wants as well for you guys, is to approach things from a realistic standpoint, to look at things in perspective, address the problem for what it is, address whatever the mistake was for what it is, And then after that, approach it from a realistic standpoint with solutions. If you don't have a solution, try to find a solution. You know, you have to be willing to look for them, though. And sometimes that's the biggest issue, is that we're not always willing to look for the solution. Sometimes we're trying to wait to see if someone else will fix it for us. Sometimes we're trying to, wait it out to see if we'll get a little bit of pity for the things that are going on, right? When instead, we need to be seeking solutions. There ain't nothing wrong with seeking a solution. There ain't nothing wrong with finding a way to deal with something that may be overwhelming you, may be bothering you, and driving you crazy. Because think about the reality of if you don't do that. Think of the reality of how it is whenever you don't approach what the problem is, right? I promise you, it's always going to be a lot worse in a situation where you don't deal with the problem than it will be in a situation where you do. Yes, will you take a loss? Probably. Will you have moments where people will consider you a failure? Yes. Are there going to be moments where people may come at you for the mistakes you've made and bring them up and try to use them against you as something to hold over your head? Yes. I'm not going to lie to you and say that you won't have moments like that. You will. But with that being said, will it do that much better for you in the end of the day if you do address what your problem is? If you do address what the issue is, I'd have to say yes. Because of the fact that at the end of the day, it is up to you to deal with what's going on in your head. It's up to you to determine how you approach a situation that affects you. You can't wait for somebody else to do that. You can't wait for someone else to show up and fix it. Especially us as adults, we've had our time to wait for someone to fix it for us. And if your folks were like mine, even then they would tell you, look, we can help you with the problem. We can try to find a way to deal with the problem, but ultimately it's still yours to deal with. And that is the biggest thing. At the end of the day, whatever it is you're trying to do, at the end of the day, whatever it is you're trying to fix, it's yours to deal with. And it's totally fine. That's totally part of it, But yeah, I'll go ahead and let you guys go. Like I said, this has been the Black in a Minute podcast. I am NeRo AnGeLo, officially about to sign out. Once again, keep your thoughts, prayers, well wishes out for Dark King Poet. He's going through a trying time right now, and he just needs your support. We need your support. I know he appreciates it. I definitely appreciate it, because I know that if I was in a situation like that, I would want somebody in my corner, talking to me or saying some nice things. So yeah, definitely do that. Also, we still have merch. Please feel free to check out the merch store. I might try to add some more stuff to that once I get some more free time. In fact, you guys let me know, what merch would you guys be down to get, because as with most of these things, we want to make what you want. Other than that, this has been the Black in a Minute podcast, sponsored by Twyman Art. Likely starting next week, we'll be in a different location. So, We may have some errors with that. We may not. Just bear with us. But we promise to get things back copacetic as soon as possible. But until then, as my brother says, peace out, power.